a panel of youngsters and whatnot and so on. He will not. But such a person can only be appointed by elder statesmen who are the party leaders or leaders of a coalition of parties, just directly without any problem. So this system will enable such persons to be appointed rather than this other system that we are having. And so once the political parties are appointed, then the balance of the commission can be appointed through the system that we have with proper amendments to take care of the weaknesses that we have seen them have. So that's what I would suggest on the issue of constituting the commission. And probably the political parties liaison committee, constituted under Article 38 of the Political Parties Act, could play a role, and therefore the Act should be amended for it to play that role. The other suggestions I would suggest under this is that we are taking into account the decisions of the Supreme Court in the various election petitions and so on how the EC operates and functions. Some amendments ought to be made to the various laws to make clear that the chairman of the Electoral Commission does not act on his own, but he acts on the decision of the Commission, on a decision that collectively arrived at. And that before even they announce the presidential elections, they must then have looked at Form 34C, which shows the results of the presidential elections, and not just a summary of what the result of each county. That's not a verification, that's not tallying. But that law needs to be tightened so that we are on proper footing. The other point under the, you had me to address you on was audit of the 2022 presidential election. The Supreme Court has exclusive jurisdiction to hear and determine disputes relating to the elections to the office of the President. And his decision is final, Article 142. To my mind, the audit cannot change or reverse the decision of the Supreme Court through a constitutional and legal process. The audit is like a post-mortem, which cannot revive a dead body, but can tell you the cause of the death. And that's what we want to know in this audit. We want to know and identify the shortcomings, the weaknesses, the loopholes, or the shortfalls which should be rectified before the next election. In fact, this is the only way you can improve on the electoral processes and instill confidence of the people in it. In my mind, in fact, such audits that we are asking for, it should be held after every general election, proper audit, so that we can progressively improve our electoral systems. Many election observers have observed that normally the election process up to the polling day was credible and counting in the polling stations was technically professional. The problem lies in tallying, tabulation, and declaration of results. The issue of whether or not the server should be opened has engaged the public debate for some time now. The more debate on this matter goes on, the more suspicions are created or raised that where there is no smoke, there must be some fire. This has left a doubt or a lingering thought in the minds of people that it may not be that the figures in the portal are different from the figures in the server. That it may not be, but it could be so. And this may repeat itself in the next election. If the same is not cleared, if these doubts are not cleared, it could erode confidence in future elections and reduce the figure of people participating in such elections. I am therefore recommending and proposing that a law should be enacted to make servers automatically open and accessible to anyone, that as soon as the presidential elections are declared. In other words, as soon as the presidential elections are declared, and that's normally the last to be declared, the server should be open, and it should be open and accessible to whoever wants to access it. Rather than these arguments we have been having in 2013, 2017, with the court, go and open the observer. Oh, we cannot open because of some foreign company has some rights, I don't know, intellectual right over it, we can't just interfere. I think it should be very clear to whoever comes to assist us that the servers will be open. And we can only do that if we make it law that the server will be open as soon as the results are declared, and will be accessible to every person, and even those who want to file petitions now, they can use it, the information there to file their petitions. Last, permit me, I'm a Pan-Africanist, and I've been a Pan-Africanist since I was in intermediate school, before I went to Alliance High School in the area of Mweshimiwa. But I've taken notice of the fact that the leaders of the two coalitions which constitute this committee are believers, are also Pan-Africanists and believers in the greater political, economic, social integration of East Africa, and indeed Africa region as a whole, as a stepping stone for faster economic development for the benefit of our people. But what I'm going to say again is relevant to Article 43, is relevant to the rising costs, is relevant to stabilizing our economy and making sure that it can take off, can grow at an accelerated pace. In BBI, we recommended an amendment to the Constitution, and we had a new Article 10A, which reads as follows. 10A, regional integration and cohesion. This constitution embraces the goals of African unity and political confederation of the Eastern Africa region as integral towards attainment of sustainable development, prosperity for all, and stability. So I'm recommending to you that you also recommend such a clause in terms of the economic and social rights, that we also have that clause in our constitution. That was my little thing. Now, just for the verbal thing, number one, I looked at your terms of reference, and I wasn't sure whether you can recommend additional or reduction of counties. I was not very, very sure on that. And therefore I did not write my thoughts down. But since it appeared before you, just on the off the cuff, I can tell you that that's a very, very sensitive matter. I can say in a sense I was sort of responsible for the 47 counties, because if you followed the arguments at that time, some were suggesting over 100, some were suggesting about 14, some were suggesting 18, and there was no way forward. But when I suggested that we just follow the districts which had been recognized in law, in the Independent and Boundaries on the Provincial and District Boundaries Act, which I piloted through Parliament in 1992, that we just accept that as a model, and so the 47 counties, everybody agreed, and we have 47 counties. Now, to take the very grave step to add, or take a very grave step to deduct, I suggest it's not a matter that can be lightly handled through a committee which has limited time and which has more pressing, important issues to decide. And therefore, I suggest that if you think that there's some merit in either adding and either reducing, maybe you recommend that the matter be separately handled properly by another body or whatever, people to look into the matter more carefully. That's number two. I also had some suggestions, but I think here you are within your mandate. I have been a senator, and I'm glad the leader of majority is here. He worked very well, and he has really matured over a very short time. He keeps a very young man and he has matured so quickly. And actually, there are two senators. One is him, and the other one is now the governor of Nandi. They have followed their career, and they have done very well. And I must pay a tribute for the system that allows such young people to come up and progress. I feel that if you have the time, you look into the place of the Senate. And I believe the place of the Senate should be strengthened in terms of legislation and in terms of everything else. And I also do support the Senate Oversight Fund should be done. Look again, Abe, on this one, if you so wish, I could write something and hand it over to you within a limited time on how the Senate could be strengthened. Because this is really something that's very, very, very close to my heart. And I think with that, if there's anything else you want me to address on, I can do it. But those are my initial thoughts. And thank you, Chairman, for being kind to me in not interrupting me. When I passed the 10-minute mark, I was looking at you very carefully. But as you know, strong to serve is our motto.
Thank you, AG Emeritus, Senator Waswako. And indeed, strong to serve. That is why I could not muster the guts to interrupt you. And we definitely benefit from your immense knowledge and experience in government, and also in your later life as a legislator. We'll have a short plenary. Maybe if I may start, before I give someone else. You have spoken to an audit, which in my interpretation looks like you're speaking about an audit of the process, electoral process, or rather an evaluation of the electoral process as provided for in the Constitution, rather than what you have said, an audit of the election, and I believe election results would be like a post-mortem that you have said is like trying to resuscitate a dead body. Then if it is a process, how would you then propose that that electoral process be evaluated after every election? Because what I've heard you say is that you would want to see a system where there is an evaluation or an audit of the electoral process with a view to improving that process. And I think that's what, in my interpretation of reading of the Constitution, the drafters of the Constitution envisage, that after every election we shall be able to evaluate and see where can we improve on the processes to ensure that we have a credible electoral process. How would you suggest that that be done? By which body? Is it IBC, or which other body would you propose that they do that review of the Constitution? You have also spoken to direct appointments and put a very strong case for direct appointments of commissioners. Where does that sit in view of the new Constitution of 2010? Because granted that the experience you are speaking about is before this new Constitution, which requires that we have a very fair, competitive process where people are given jobs on merit. Where would your proposal then to have direct appointments proposed by party leaders like Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka here, who is a party leader and a former vice president, and Honorable Eugene Wamalwa is also a party leader. There are party leaders who, at least Honorable Eugene's party has, I think, about 5 members of parliament and a number of county assembly members. They are party leaders without a single MCA, a single member of parliament or a senator or any elected official. And I could form a party, like we have given the case example of UDA that we formed about a year before the election, but today is the largest political party. Shall we not be disadvantaging those who are not yet party leaders, those who are yet to form parties, and therefore advantaging the likes of Eugene, Honorable Kalonzo, and other party leaders who already have established political parties? And would that fly directly contra the Constitution in terms of being discriminative? Your Excellency can go first, then Omar. Who else has Eugene?
Yeah, it's okay.
That order.
Very good to see you, Attorney General Emeritus. You talk about the school. But I want to humble myself before you say I was your pupil at Kaplan and Stratton. I like your spirit of regional integration. And of course, that notwithstanding, at some stage I became Vice President, the Attorney General. But that's the nature of things. I know your ability, your commitment to this country. You recall one time you wanted to resign, and I walked up to you and told him, you will not do that in the best interest of this country. You're a man I've seen who has received a lot of beating for being a stickler for the rule of law. 2 points. Like you, and you remember when we had the BBI sittings, I entered appearance and pitched for the role of the Senate. And since we cannot do much other than recommend that this issue be resolved, we heard from I think it was your successor, Professor Gilum Wegai, also pitched for the role of the Senate. And you have one up against him because you've yourself served as a senator. But what I liked about your selection of IB's commissioners, and I don't think it goes necessarily against what Kimani Ichung'wah is arguing, is to think of persons with gravitas. And you say they will never apply. And yet we know these are people who can never be compromised or bought with money. The likes of the late Harry Mole and the first mayor, I think Margaret Kenyatta was, when Mzee Moi that time saw these names, they are not necessarily pro-Kanu, he picked them on your advice. I think the same advice can be given to political parties so that we can get away from this ghost of stolen elections or allegations of stolen elections. So I like that, persons with gravitas, in addition to the experts. Because today's expert, look at them, it goes through, by the way, before you came in, the selection panels here, and they were very gracious to the work of this committee, basically open-minded, and we thank them. But this whole thing about people with absolutely no political sense coming in, and they have no feeling whatsoever, and all they do is, and we know, I can tell you, as you know, we've been serious political players in the 2013 election, 2017, and 2022, which falls short of what those persons with gravitas achieved in 2002. When in fact, the outcome of that election made the whole world say the country with, I think, the most optimistic nation on earth after 2002 was Kenya. And we continue to build on that goodwill, this country will be very far. So, I just want to agree with you on the persons with gravitas. How you achieve that is something that we probably may want to develop with us, and not necessarily the strength of political. By the way, you're very clear, Kimani may not have listened. You say the major 2 or 3 political parties can present lists, and the others, 1. And you can also look at the existing ones. I mean, the persons perhaps will be worked upon by the selection panel. And then we end up with a product that can deliver this country to the next level when it comes to political party governance. The only thing I want you to address, because you didn't address it, because the rest of the points are very clear, in fact, absolutely well thought out, is the fidelity to political parties. This aggression on the party that ends up forming government, and in this case our friends in Kenya Kwanza. You will remember that immediately after elections, Azimio la Umoja One Kenya had the majority of members of parliament. But there are people in this country who do not believe in political party democracy or decency. They want just to be in government. And they went to government and caused a violation of what was even agreed at that time by way of registered coalitions with the registered political parties. First of all, what would you recommend with regard to the independence and the strengthening of the role of the office of the registered political parties? And again, fidelity to coalitions and coalition arrangements. Because then whoever takes over power at a particular time will say, I want the numbers so that I can carry out my legislative program. But it appears to me, if we are to borrow the example of what's happening in the United States today, the Republicans are the majority in Congress, and the American people are teaching us something. You negotiate and even end up like they did last night, say, let's leave out this matter of funding the war in Ukraine and look at national interest. And then everybody ends up feeling a bit more accommodated. President Biden is a president on the Democratic Party, but Senator McCarthy, of course, they want to impeach him now. The extremists on Republicans want to impeach him for considering what they've given. But since our Constitution 2010, I'm sure you'll agree, has drawn heavily from the American model, presidential system. I think that it probably will make this country be in good standing if we then can follow some of these ethos and avoid disorganizing, dismantling in a very dismissive manner political parties that take time to put together, coalition arrangements that they take time to put together. Of course, The idea of a post-election coalition is also possible, but immediately after an election, in a country as divided as we are, right now divided right in the middle, and then you have a head of state who probably said, I want to stamp great authority. He ends up doing that, but at what cost with regard to political party democracy? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Since everybody has said something, as a writer before their remarks, I'll also say that my time at the Senate was made extremely useful by the likes of you, the late Haji, Raitu Murungi. You're able to clarify to Junior and I and those who cared to sit down with you a lot of the episodes of history where on the decisions that were taken at that time by the former president and some of the decisions that were made by very great leaders. And you told me that to publish your memoirs, some people have to be dead. So I had you talk about your memoirs. I'm confident those people are now dead. you actually, that was the joke you had, that if you were to publish your memoirs, some people must not be there. And that meant they must be absent from life, from the earth. Two.
But they have their successors and assigns. Estates could go for him.
You never clarified that. Maybe you can clarify now. Number two, you know, you make a very flowery reference to the elections of 2002, and that there was a bipartisan IPC as a product of the IPPG. But also the margin of victory between Uhuru Kenyatta and the late Mwai Kibaki was so significant that no Tharaka Nithi could turn it around. And in fact, I'm one of those who was very critical of the Moi administration. But one greatest act of statesmanship that is corroborated by both President William Ruto and former head of public service, Sally Koskei, is that when everybody was waiting for Moi to do the magic, the late President Moi asked Uhuru Kenyatta to concede, which led to the concession at Serena. We need to have a culture of conceding elections. Whether we are the country, in terms of margins of victory, it is not specified. The only constitutional threshold that is required is 50 plus 1 vote and 25% in 24 counties. Americans vote that way every successive elections. Ghanaian presidents win with margins of 50,000 or 25,000. But we have radicalized and weaponized some of our base of supporters to constantly deny, to accept victory by always blaming some top technology, some software, some server. Yet it is some of it is in open public gallery for it to be said. The server or the portal was simply a reflection of the server. We have since been informed by our Supreme Court team that the Supreme Court actually, in 2022, but then after that, we said all elections were contested, and all of them read Raila Odinga and others versus, you know, so the contestation has been from one center. But I wanted to ask, I don't know whether you were part of the Supreme Court process of the 2022 elections. Actually, an audit of the server was actually, and we will present it in the deliberations of this committee, was actually ordered by the Supreme Court. Both parties to the suit were actually asked to come. They were taken to those places. Others, even from ODM, had their notes and they wrote, and they all signed onto that report, upon which I'm told it is what informed part of the decision of the Supreme Court. But I totally agree with this proposal that we indeed need to make it law that servers be opened immediately after an election so that we conclude these elections conclusively. We do not need to repeat ourselves constantly that after every election we are putting out some IBC people out of work. We are victimizing and vilifying Kenyans. We are, in the lead up to the elections, we're intimidating them. We are we are beating, we are kidnapping them, we are murdering them, and those are some of the things we need to look into. But the final thing I wanted to ask, election cannot be the work of only political parties and politicians. I think all these Kenyans here, including the media, those who work in other sectors, are interested in the outcome of these elections. In fact, the politicians are a very insignificant part of the entire electoral process. But I've had Senator Okongo Mkeni ask about it. Are you aware of the Mozambican model, where the commission is appointed on account of party strength? And it is not usually cited as a best practice because it is in the interest of those commissioners in terms of survival to ensure that the party that nominated them continues to win. And that whole idea is also manifest, unfortunately, in the Cherera Four, who, in our view, are appointed in very close to the elections, who I think had a common plan, who now continue to peddle a common theory that is fairly tired about them not having been called into a commission meeting to decide whether to subvert or affirm the popular will of the Kenyan people. So I wanted you to speak to the partiality of these people who are nominated by political parties, who, in my estimation, are more prone to subvert an election than to affirm it. I think those are though I totally agree with the strengthening of the Senate. It's not only strengthening of the Senate. We must take the courage and deal with this issue once and for all. This is a fallacy. Senate must be the upper house of parliament.
Thank you.
Senate, just a minute, must be the upper house of parliament. How do you get elected in 6 constituencies, 12 constituencies, and then you are told these two houses sit by side? It's not practical, it's not logical.
Okay, thank you. Eugene?
So,
sorry.
Chair,
Before Eugene, sit like a point of order or something.
yeah, sort of. But first, let me say my apologies. I came from the Council of
You don't need
Governors. We had elections of the office bearers for the Council of Governors. But Chair, I'm just concerned that we, the committee, are taking too long to seek clarifications. Chair, you took about 15 minutes. Hassan has taken 15 minutes. There's a whole list of people. So just out of concern, can we go? No,
Thank you.
You took long. Could we at least take 2-3 minutes?
That point is taken. Cicely, we hear you.
Yeah.
Please, Eugene.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The gentleman before us happens to be my namesake. The only thing I blame him for is I think he made the name Amos more popular than Eugene, but his name is actually Amos Eugene. And one thing apart from sharing a name with him is we share a love for Shakespeare. This gentleman with my late brother, true Shakespearean. And your presentation really touches one of Shakespeare's famous lines, to be or not to be, in Hamlet.
Indeed, there's a tide in the affairs of men. This is a tide. You don't catch it at its height.
Yes.
This country could go hayway. Anyway, continue. Just
Yes. So the elephant in the room, and I'm very happy that you've touched on the critical issues. We have about 5 issues. We have 25 days to go. And you are not just speaking to us, you are making recommendations in terms of way forward, and I'm hoping our Secretariat is capturing this. And on each issue, you have left us with a clear recommendation. One of those is the issue of to be opened or not to be opened. To be or not to be opened, the service. That has been a hot political potato. But from what you have said today, I think we can pick a very clear recommendation that this matter should be a matter of course after the elections. Servers should be opened in the interest of transparency and accountability, and also to boost public confidence in our electoral processes, equipment, and everything. So it should not even be an issue that should be left for debate. What I wanted to ask, so that we can tap into your wisdom, is the IBC appeared before us, and we're looking at Article 88. So when you look at Article 88, H, 4H, it's very clear that it is the duty of IEBC, that is on page 40 of our Constitution, at the top, the first line, H. It's actually the cardinal duty of IEBC to ensure facilitation of, first of all, observation, and this they have been doing. They have been observers, facilitated, external observers, monitoring. I don't know if you've gotten it. 88, 4H.
88?
4H.
4.
Yeah, in my copy, it's on page 40. The first sentence at the top.
Oh, mine is.
4H.
No, I came with it. Oh, my goodness.
Are you looking at 88?
No, I came with the wrong.
Maybe the secretariat can help you with the latest copy. But basically, there are three things the IBC is supposed to do to facilitate observation, and observers have been facilitated. To facilitate monitoring, that has been done externally. And from what you're proposing, the issue is evaluation of elections. Where IBC has been doing it, by themselves, and we had asked them whether this is not just self-appraisal. If we were to go by that provision of Article 88 4H in terms of evaluation of the elections, and to take your recommendation, and there are those who came before you who also recommended amendment so that it is provided in our law that there will be that audit done immediately after elections, servers opened automatically. Would that fall within your recommendation? And that you can make in your further written submissions. You can look at the law, and it will help this committee in terms of those recommendations. Then the other issue that you have made a very clear recommendation on, and I hope our secretariat has captured it. So the issue of counties. That's a very sensitive issue. You were the AG, I think when we had the Akiwomi report, you did make your advice to that commission, and the tribal clashes of 92, 97, and whatever happened. So in terms of adding or subtracting, to have or not to have more counties, it's another hot political potato, and we are happy with your recommendation that perhaps we will not be looking at whether the matter is within our jurisdiction or it's beyond our mandate, as per the motion passed by Parliament. And therefore, recommendation, what I wanted your advice on, maybe when you're making your recommendation, whether that can fall within, of course, the purview of Article 188, where it's required that Parliament handles the issue of creation of the new borders, counties and whatever. That will be very helpful in terms of a way forward and in terms of recommendations. Lastly, we have the issue of course, the two-thirds gender rule. We are looking for that clause that disappeared. I think you are saying that could really resolve the situation of the two-thirds gender rule. Because in the county assemblies, because of the law that we put there, Article 177, we have achieved in all our 47 county assemblies. But in our National Assembly and I think Parliament, we have a problem. I think you can help us find the clause that disappeared that could have actually resolved this. Be more specific in terms of recommending so that we can pick it as part of a recommendation to resolve that issue. And lastly, the issue of Article 43 and matters of socioeconomic rights. That also, I think you made some very, very good recommendations. It's an issue that, of course, our colleagues in Kenya Kwanza didn't want on the table. But you're saying there is, it's a national crisis. Kenyan suffering don't belong to Kenya Kwanza or Azimio. They are all Kenyans suffering, whether, regardless of how they voted. So there was the recommendation you were making about a national consultation, NCG. I think that's a very good recommendation, which I'm hoping will also capture. But what I wanted to ask is, I think during Kibaki's time, when we had this economic crisis, Kibaki came up with I think the economic recovery strategy and a team that was tasked to actually address the crisis at the time. I remember during Moi's time, when we had a similar crisis, he came up with a dream team that included people who were not even his supporters, a cross-cutting team of experts and people like Leakey and others who didn't agree with him politically, but a team that would be brought together as broad-based and with the necessary expertise, economic and legal luminaries, if that could actually be recommended, so that we say it is no longer a Kenya Kwanza affair, it's a national crisis we are facing. Let's come together and let's reason together.
Well, thank you. Maybe we give you time to respond now. Because in the interest of time and what Cicely was reminding us of, I think it's good. And again, thank you. We are not raising any issues. I think we're very clear.
Mine was just to
I thought you
have raised a very important issue on the issue of bicameral house vis-a-vis the Senate.
It was very
I
clear.
want to make a small request that you don't make it off the cuff. You send us a write-up on your thoughts.
Yeah.
I had actually given him one myself when they were sitting at KICC. Maybe just to enrich it and see what we can do. Over to you, Bwana Amos Wako.
I wish to, my eyes are Muse. I was to start with which text should he use. Let me use this one so that I'm not now seeing clearly. First of all, let me thank you for the comments you have made, which have all been very positive, and that's the way it should be. Mr. Chairman, your committee can even make proposals for amendment. I do not think that the proposal that the political parties appoint in any way contradicts the Constitution, but if you feel it somehow it contradicts the Constitution, but you like the idea, then you can do a slight amendment. And if you want me to help you, I can do it. Honorable Muchoka, I just wish to confirm that there was a point when I thought I had had enough and I wanted to sign. And actually, I had gotten good jobs somewhere. But he came. My friend came. He was, of course, my pupil before he became an advocate. So he was now taking care of his master, both spiritually and whatever. He came and really, with a long discussion, and he convinced me not to resign. And that's why I continued. At that time, continued in the next regime, and continued to make a record of 20 years over as Attorney General. And I'm always grateful to you for that. And that's what I've made. I don't know where I would be now if I had made that decision to quit. Honorable Kalonzo, you asked about fidelity to political parties. To me, the situation to me, that one is very, very clear. Kenya is a multi-party democratic state, and anything that undermines that should not be acceptable. But more important to me is that wananchi, the people, the sovereignty of this country rest in the people. And the people, you have gone to them and you have said that I'm now in this party, these are my programs, and on the basis of that, they have elected you. And maybe you decided to stand on that party because you knew that party was popular in that area. And therefore, for you to be elected, you must be a member of that committee. So you are going there under false pretenses to be elected, and then soon after election to go somewhere else. That is deception to the people of this country. And we should be very firm on it. I agree with my, if you go to the parliamentary record, what Tom Boyer said when in the parliament, when they brought up that law that if you resign from the party which elected you, then you must go back to the people and have a by-election. I agree entirely with what Thomas Joseph Boyer said. You should have the courage just to resign and go, rather than say, I will not go. I'll use the processes of the tribunal or the court and so on. And by the time they decide, my time will be over. I've heard such statements being made. And really, that is arrogance, impunity of the highest order. For you to sort of agree, I've left. And you are now on the other side. And then you say, but nothing will happen to me because I'll use the system to stay where I am now until the next election. You know, it's a gross abuse of the system that is there. And such approach should be discouraged and discouraged completely to me. So, we should make it easier for such people to resign, and not make it not so much for such people to resign, but we should make it easier for the institutions that deal with such matters to make quick decisions, and if there need be a by-election, let it be a by-election, rather than boasting that we are going to use the courts, the tribunals, and so on, which will take you round and round until the 4 or 5 years are over. Really, all of us around this room, we should detest that type of approach to our politics. We are not maturing enough. We should, by now, we should have matured enough. Not even to say that should be an embarrassment to yourself. And they say so again with the pride. This is wrong. This is the rotten part of our Kenyan politics is really that. So I think I've answered you, Mshoka, that one. Dancer Mari, yeah, thank you very much. We have been together for many years. Safari Park particularly, and so on. And the comments we made about 2002 elections, the margin of victory was such that they could not be tampered with. Who tells you that? I've been in the system. If I wanted to tamper with that, I would have done it. We have a recent example here in Gabon. Gabon, what happened? Did the Electoral Commission announce so and so has won? But when they opened the server, what happened? And yet the result of the election announced in Gabon, the gap was so wider than the 2002 elections. I think it was something like 17% versus 7%, but they had done it. I'm just saying this to give credit. Let's give the credit where it is due, that the Electoral Commission did a good job in that election and announced the results which reflected the wishes of the people of Kenya. And that Electoral Commission was actually composed of people, commissioners, nominated by political parties of the day. And therefore it's possible. Now, when you say that people nominated by parties will be partial and so on. Yeah, it's true. But you see, if you do not give political parties, particularly the 2, 3 big ones, that chance to nominate their own people, if they have to go into the system of maneuvering, manipulating the selection system to make sure that the person is there, the type of person they'll nominate will not be a person of gravitas. It will be a sycophant, and therefore he'll be influencing. He'll be there to disturb the situation and so on. So that's why it's good just to accept the situation the way it is. Say, you are the big guys, not nominate. But there should be people of gravitas, and they will do so. Rather than making them go under the table, manipulating, and making sure that their sycophants are nominated. This question. But anyway, thank you very much for putting order in the discussions. I can tell you that Cecil Marira is the governor of Embu. We also have a claim on her in Busia. Yes. So we are very proud of her in Busia also. I think, Eugene Wamadwa, you mentioned quite a number of things which, in a sense, I agree with. Actually, I was agreeing with my recommendations, but also suggesting a few things. This Article 884H, I think it can be used, but it will be useful if there was a clear clause to say that after every general election there'll be that. Opening. Yeah. Make it clear, rather than just a general. I think that's basically what. Anything else?
Thank you.
But I can say I'm available.
Yeah, thank you. Please enrich our thinking. Including, by the way, this thing, Zambians went, and I think at some stage, Hassan and referring to, again, talk about Frelimo experience in Mozambique and Renemo. But Zambians have actually decided, rather than have this electronic transmission, they will do it manually. I don't want you to answer now, but perhaps give it some thought. Give it some thought.
But then you didn't answer whether you were in that petition as one of the lawyers in Dazmio.
Which one?
Dazmio petition.
No, I was not.
He wasn't.
Honorable Co-Chair, just to thank the Honorable Attorney General Emeritus. He's actually flown in from, he was out of the country at a family tragedy, and he just flew in for this. And we must really, really appreciate. And we've taken up a lot of your time. In fact, speaking from your brains, we should have paid you your hefty fee notes. But because of the patriotism, and your colleague, Honorable Guido Muigai, was here also, this committee benefited greatly. We hope the sitting AG would also have time to come and, you're adding value to our process. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my pupil master.
So we get your item.
Yeah?
We get your item.
Oh, yeah. I think Okonko, we're going to ask for a write-up. If the chairman so orders me
yes,
to.
please do. We wouldn't mind on the issue of the Camero house.
Yeah, I'll be more than
I am certain Senator Mugeni is interested more on more powers getting to the Senate. And we shall allow it.
If you can give me 14 days. Or that's too much?
We have a balance of 25 days as a committee.
Well,
7 days.
7 days.
No, as Eugene, my namesake, I confirm that I'm also called Eugene.
For the record.
I think it sort of indicated to you that Nikona Huku.
I think you can.
14, fine.
Okay, 14 is the fact that he also took time from outside the country to appear. Good. Allow you the 14 days.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Asante sana. We have members. We have Kipra next. We still have a group of senators, Enoch Wambua and Tom Ojeda and Vendamo Onekina. We have agreed to allow the Ogier community 10 minutes. And we have agreed with them strictly 10 minutes because of time. And we still have another 4 groups. You know why I'm saying that? For Eugene and Omar, who never pays attention to what is going on in the meeting. You know why I'm saying that? Did you even hear what I'm saying? You and Eugene, you know why I'm saying that?
Chairman, this is all on camera.
Oh,
But it's fair enough.
but it's fair because the housekeeping.
Yeah, just asking that
anytime.
Eugene keeps his comments brief.
No, for Eugene and Hassan Omar, it is not comments. Please keep your lectures brief.
Chair, what you need to guide is that they've made their comments for the entire day. Now they need to
Now they need
for the rest of the day.
No, Aaron Cheriot,
I will skip
to
some.
show a level of maturity. That was very high.
No, you know Eugene and Omar. I think I want to agree with Senator Aaron. You have spoken for the day.
Tumetumia bundles zetu.
I will skip some.
Bundles zimeisha.
Zimeisha. Eugene.
Kipra, are they here?
Yeah, there they are.
Thank you. We will allow you to pass. Kipra, karibuni. We'll do a quick round of introduction. From my right, Senator Mugeni Okongo, Senator Nyamira, Honorable Amina Malindi, Honorable Eugene Wamalwa, Honorable Pio Andai, I just stepped out, His Excellency Honorable Musyoka, Senator Omar Hassan, Governor Cecily Marire, Senator Aaron Cheruyot, who is our majority leader. Mine is Kimani Shumwa. Karibu, you can equally do a quick introduction. We'll give you 10-15 minutes. Are you able to do yours in 10 minutes?
Thanks very much, Chair.
Is that you do not need affirmative action.
Huh? So I'm going to, thanks very much. We are really grateful to be here. I'll start by introducing my team. On my right, I have Dr. Elda Onsom, who is a director. And then on my left, I have Irene Mithia, again a director at the Institute. And my name is Rose Ngugi. I'm the executive director for Kipra. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Okay, Rose, I think what you didn't get what His Excellency was saying is saying you do not need affirmative action in terms of the female gender balance, but you may need affirmative action in terms of boy child. So, Karibu.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think you've asked whether we can do it in our contribution in 10 minutes. We'll try to do that. First of all, is to say that we received an invitation to this committee on the 19th of September to make a presentation on any of the 5 issues that the National Dialogue Committee is focusing on. And Kipra, we have a submission on one of the issues, and that is on issue on outstanding constitutional matters relating to the Article 43 of the Constitution, the cost of living and related issues. The Article 43 of the Constitution on cost of living and related issues covers various aspects, these including economic and rights of everyone in Kenya. That covers one, highest attainable standard of health, adequate food and of acceptable quality, matters to do with housing, matters to do with clean water, social security and education. And this is what we are focusing on, given that at the moment what we are facing is rising cost of living and also inequality. And we also look at this as basic needs for each and every Kenyan. And since independence, sessional paper number 10 of 1963 identified three basic issues for Kenyans, and that is matters to do with poverty, issues to do with hunger, and also health. And these things have continued even in the Vision 2030, the Big Four agenda, and the better. Matters to do with the basic needs of Kenyans have continued to carry the day. And of critical importance when it comes to cost of living is the fact that when you look at these basic needs, food, shelter, health, clothing, and education, they actually compete for income for households. And when we think about the bottom of the pyramid, it means that they are competing for very meager income. And without an increase in a commensurate increase in the income levels, then it means that the households are left with a very big headache on how they can allocate the resources to meet all the needs. We appreciate that the government has continuously continued to support matters to do with access to basic needs, but there are still some issues that we still feel still facing us, otherwise would not be where we are today. So I'm going to look at two issues, and Dr. Elder will look at the other three. And the first one is to do with the adequacy of food and of acceptable quality. And start by saying that, yes, the government has given priority to food production to achieve food and nutrition security. And a lot of efforts have been put on the supply side, whether we are talking about fertilizer subsidies to reduce the cost of production, investing in irrigation to ensure that we are not relying on rain-fed production, agricultural extension services so that we can have high-quality yields, matters to do with the minimum wage, because without that you can not talk about the demand side of issues. Access to credit, because credit is where we smoothen our consumption today and tomorrow. Expansion of social protection, and social protection comes in very handy because we realize that there are many of us who are below poverty line, and we need to be protected to sustain our livelihood. In addition is making markets work, and there's a lot that is happening. Right now we have a Ministry of Cooperatives, a very key move forward in terms of not only aggregation, but also supporting farmers to see that they can access markets. So what do we see as gaps in food supply. Of course, as a country, we are producing food, but there are circumstances when you find that the supply of food results in some areas having bumper harvest and other areas not having any food. In addition, you'll also find that when we have good rains, we have bumper harvests, but during drought situation, we find ourselves again struggling with food supply. It means that there's one element we are not exploiting, and this is the value addition, which we do through manufacturing. And manufacturing costs are high. One, given that for you to do food manufacturing, you're actually relying on inputs from agriculture, and agriculture output is actually susceptible to drought situations. So during drought situations, we find we don't have adequate raw materials for manufacturing. In addition, you'll notice that in manufacturing, food manufacturing, majority of the farms are actually micro and small enterprises, which of course we know face a lot of challenges, including technology, as well as sourcing for this raw material. So on the supply side then, you'll notice that we have not managed to smoothen between bumper harvests and when we have drought, and therefore we don't have adequate food. On the demand side, you'll notice that we have a registered minimum wage, and this minimum wage covers about 77% of our workers. We have seen over time that minimum wage has been actually reviewed upwards, and the last time that it was reviewed upwards is in 2022 by 12%. But the increase in the prices for essential commodities went up by 22%, which means that the purchasing power for households was actually reduced. And given that in Kenya, households spend over 50% of their budget in food, it means that with an increase in the food prices, without an increase in minimum wage, it leaves the households at a very weak position to manage their basic needs. Further is the food inflation. If you look at inflation in Kenya, a key significant contribution is food. Like last year, on average, the overall inflation was about 7.7%, with food inflation at 13.1%, almost double that. So anytime we therefore think about food, it should be the first priority, it should be our second priority, it should be the third priority if we have to manage the welfare of Kenyans. And for this reason, it's important to think about how we can diversify our crops, how we can support the production, as well as how we can actually enhance the earnings of the households so that they can smoothen their demand for food. And lastly is also the social security, social safety nets, which can come in handy for the vulnerable groups when we have food price shocks. And of course, we know that we are moving very well with the early warning system, but the key question is how we actually manage to put everything in order such that when we have drought, we don't face the same situation that we had with a prolonged drought that started in 2021.
Dr. Maybe if I could guide you, you're already 7 minutes and you've only tackled 1 out of 7 issues. Meaning if we move at that pace, we'll probably finish at 3 and we'll not be doing justice to the rest of the country and other stakeholders who have been waiting. I want to propose that don't take us through the entire paper. It's a very good paper, very well written. and just give us highlights.
Okay.
Don't go through item by item the way you are doing it.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
I'm sorry, I know you're an academician, so you are very tempted to take us through a class.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm also a former lecturer, so
Yes, yes.
also give a little
I saw that danger, Mwalimu.
All right. So I've just talked about social safety net, so I can talk about social security. I'll take only 1 minute and say that yes, a lot has been done, but the kind of gaps that we are realizing is that if we look at, say for example, the hunger safety net programs, we give households about 2,000 per month. And these are mainly, for example, in rural areas. And the poverty line, going by the 2015-2016 household survey, is actually at about 1954, which means that we are giving them just at the poverty level. And when there is an increase in prices, this is not revealed upwards. So they are left actually, they actually drop down the poverty line. When it comes to poverty across the children, what you'll notice is that 4 out of every 4 children actually facing a significant level of poverty, which has implications in terms of their nutrition levels, and we shall discuss nutrition later. But I want to say at this point that when we don't take care of children at that very beginning, the country tends to lose about 6.9% of GDP to malnutrition, and a core element is in productivity, which is about 6.5% of GDP. So going forward then, we are saying that we need to look at the social protection such that in addition to minimum wage, we go beyond that and see to it that we are providing affordable transport, housing, universal health care, and education so that we can leave the households with adequate budget that they can allocate to other things that they need in life. And also finally is to address matters to do with social mobility. From our research, we found that poor households tend to get to poor situations because even when we have social protection, which are not well targeted, then poor households are not benefiting. And if they don't benefit, they don't take their children to school. If they don't take their children to school, the children actually end up being poor. So to break that, it's critical that we look at how we target our social protection to allow for social mobility for those at the bottom of the pyramid. Chair, I'll give 5 minutes to my colleague here, Dr. Elder, and I'll tell her to use just 5 minutes.
I think 5 minutes on the
yes,
high
yes,
side.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I'll take us through the following areas. I start with health and nutrition. The government, as we know, is implementing a number of interventions, starting with the universal health care. We also have a lot of support when it comes to provision of food. We have a lot of support when it comes to production of vaccines. However, a number of issues remain that are outstanding. First is the high out-of-pocket spending. And this is basically because we have emergence of non-communicable diseases because the country is transitioning from the higher incidence of communicable diseases like malaria, which is being tackled, but now we have new diseases like hypertension, we have diabetes, we have cancer, among others. All those constitute the high cost of out-of-pocket. We have a mismatch between what we are spending and the outcomes of health, particularly when it comes to the overall human capital of the country. Stockouts in medical centers, particularly the public health institutions, and this is because of weaker supply chain systems, the distribution of human resources for health, and these include the doctors, the specialists, we have the community health workers, among others, which then means going forward we need to tackle this through the following: ensuring that we expand the provision of quality health. This tackles support for households, and this can be through the universal health coverage. We need to improve the budgetary allocation and utilization, because primary health is one of the default functions, and here the counties have a key role to play, particularly from the prevention, nutrition, and also ensuring that we access public utilities like water, which are key. We also need to look at the redistribution of healthcare workers. When it comes to housing, this is a key area because in the Article 43, each Kenyan has a right to quality housing, and this is housing that has amenities, but the key gaps can be tackled through exploring effective land use planning and management policies, which ensure that all the population in the rural and urban areas, particularly in the informal settlements, have access to housing that has amenities and housing that helps them attain the basic minimum as per the Constitution. We also need to balance between the development of our infrastructure such that every Kenyan can access that pertains to quality and also the standard of accommodation. When it comes to clean water and safe water, this we know the amendment of the Water Bill 2023, which supports partnerships, but we have outstanding issues which relate to access to clean and safe water in the informal settlements, arid and semi-arid lands, and even in the high potential areas where we still have poor water harvesting systems that we can leverage on as a country, and that then compromises the quality of water that the Kenyans are accessing. Going forward, then, we recommend the need to enhance investments and capacity development in rural and the informal settlements. We need to look at the water management, particularly wastewater treatment, which requires use of technology and also high capital investment. When it comes to water harvesting, it will be important to put legislative frameworks in place, particularly in the public places where we have high levels of space in terms of roofing that accommodates water when it rains, and that can be harvested for use not only in the urban areas where we have most housing, but also even in the rural areas through the piping. Finally, on education, in addition to the reforms that are taking place, we find gaps in terms of inequalities to access to education, particularly in the post-primary education, which we know is key where skills are being developed. Interventions then could relate to addressing inequalities in access to quality education, and here technology has a key role, and hence need to look at how to have universal access to internet, particularly not only in schools, but in homes and in public places, looking at the safety of children online, and also improving school infrastructure by increasing also community awareness on their role in provision of education, both at the basic level and tertiary level, which we know is very key for skills development and also human capital development.
Well, we thank you. Does your colleague want to add anything in a minute? We don't want to feel deprived. But please notice, we thank you for accepting to even give us a written memorandum.
Thank you, Chair. We are satisfied with the submissions, and we look forward to further engagement. Thank you.
Well, thank you. We thank you so much. I don't know whether any of the colleagues here would want to interact with that submission.
Yeah, I just one very short question.
We shall hear Honorable Hassan Omar in absolute silence.
Yes, this is a very well done paper, and I always have a lot of respect for the work done by Kipra, and I can see once upon a time your former board chair, Linda Musumba, is here with us. My question is that as you make all these analysis about government interventions, particularly in terms of mitigating the cost of living, can you either forecast the impact it has had or forecast the impact it will have? Like you see, we said we did a G2G, government to government on the fuel. That was supposed to ease the pressure on the dollar, so that then we don't have scarcity of dollars like what is happening in Tanzania. And in addition to that, to try and keep the rate of the shilling against the dollar at least mitigated. We have had interventions with respect to subsidies on fertilizer. We've had an intervention in terms of bringing oil and other food products at zero-rated import duty. So I want, are you able, maybe even if you don't have the answers now, to analyze, because this government is implementing a plan and you are a government agency, to analyze whether there is some impact with some of these interventions in the short and probably in the long term of some of these interventions with respect to mitigating the cost of living.
Yes.
I just want to really thank the three ladies. I think it's the first time we are having this kind of forum where the entire team is one of ladies. And it gives me some comfort. For the first time, we are not talking about the men. and just to let you, actually, I am very keen to know whether, just taking up from what Hassan has said, are you analyzing the impact of the government programs that are there in the plan in relation to the issues that you've raised? For example, I'd be very happy to hear from you what has been the impact of the subsidized fertilizer to farmers in relation to the last season, and has that improved the quantity and quality of food? Are we there? Are we there yet? And in your view, listening to Kenyans and politicians, we want quick fixes. We want to wake up one morning and the government has subsidized fuel by half or by a quarter or whatever percentage. We want to wake up one day and we have subsidized maize meal so that it's now below 150. And we saw that attempt in the last regime. Between what happened in the last regime from a very independent position and what is being attempted currently by the current regime, which is the better way of sorting these issues? Is it those quick fixes, or is it long-term, well-calculated plans?
Chair, because I served in the last regime, I think our friends from Kenya Kwanza are saying their plan is working very well. We just want to know, because this plan is called Bottom-Up Economic Transformation Agenda, Better. This plan was supposed to make lives better for Kenyans. In 100 days, now it's a year. If this plan has worked, as my colleagues are saying, and we have a bumper harvest, why is it that we're importing yellow maize now? Can you explain to us? Many of us are farmers. We don't understand. It's very worrying. The last time we ate yellow maize, I was a little boy in the Nyayo era. Are things okay? Is the plan working?
May I clarify something about the yellow maize? And this is so important, especially for the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa. The yellow maize is coming here to strictly help us with livestock, animal feeds, poultry, livestock. Because what the government has realized upon analysis is that the cost of animal feeds is too high to keep farmers in profit. And that's why we are bringing in cheap yellow maize, not for human consumption, I repeat here, not for human consumption, but for animals. That's the purpose of the yellow maize. So Eugene Omalwa, be sure of that. And that's why we're giving fertilizer for proper maize for human consumption.
Okay.
I think, Chair, we live in this country. This is a country where we've had sugar being imported and mixed brown and white. Once you open the door for yellow maize, what controls do we have? That's the worry of most farmers. We have a bumper, we are harvesting. I just came from home now. Why you bring us yellow maize now when we have a bumper harvest?
You know, if we, although His Excellency keeps encouraging dialogue, when we speak across the table to speak to each other, I think the fair thing is to allow Kipra to have that very balanced analysis to tell us. Because, for instance, speaking from where Cess is sitting, I may have the view that the subsidies, consumer subsidies that Honorable Eugene's government did in the last regime did not work. If anything, they left all those bills to this regime to pay. And therefore, Kipra would be in a better position to be able to analyze and tell us.
All of you guys who are together, you're talking strange things to some of us.
I can confirm that Kimani Ichung'wah was not there. We were all together.
We were all together initially before Eugene edged us out. So maybe Kipra should be able to analyze and tell us what is a more sustainable policy to pursue. Is it the consumer subsidies? Is it the producer subsidies? Is it what from your paper, I have seen you have spoken about wage increments and enforcing that, because the cost of living inevitably will keep rising, and some by factors beyond our control as a country, for instance, the fuel issue. But the challenge then are Kenyans having the levels of income to be able to afford that cost of living. So maybe you would strike a balance for us, and we don't expect you to necessarily have all the answers now. We would not mind a well-done paper like this one, probably to answer those questions if you're not in a position to answer now, unless you have a quick one as we close.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks very much, committee members. I think these are very exciting questions, and I want to say one is that yes, we can do impact, and we have done actually a very good analysis on the implications if all the proposals that have been given by the government were to be implemented. But I want to say that recently we have launched our report, the Kenya Economic Report, that was looking at the cost of living. And one of the key things that you'll notice from it, and that's why we are focusing a lot on the food, is that food actually taking over 50% of the income. It makes it the first, second, and third priority that we should get into. Transport costs, especially for those who are using matatus and the like, it also takes almost 10% for transport, and it is among, I think, the second in terms of contribution to the cost of living for Kenyans. So when we are able to reduce actually the cost for fuel, it means that you can reduce the cost for transport. It means that you can reduce the cost for distribution of foods, and therefore you can have an implication on the prices for food. Now, it's one thing to have food supply in the market, but it's another to say that I can access it. I may not access it because it's not affordable, but can I also be empowered to actually access it? And I can only access it if my income is also taken care of, which means that increase productivity for micro and small enterprises, for the farmers, they can reap higher and they can increase their incomes. Yeah? But at the same time, you say that you may not actually get that immediately. You may also find that there are those who are still struggling, and that's why matters to do with the social protection come in. And the social protection means that we need also to review not just the 2,000 that we are giving to the households, but we need also to ask ourselves, are we giving them something real in real terms, what are we giving to them? So both the supply side and the demand side factors need to be taken into account so that we can see markets operating. And it does not mean that the government does not have a role. It has a very major role to ensure that it's able to put in appropriate regulations to ensure that one is able to access and that the pricing process is also not, what would I say, it's not penalizing, especially those at the bottom of the pyramid.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ali. We will encourage you to give us a more detailed analysis of such interventions for us to be able to interact with as we continue, because we may not have the time now to engage on everything. Analyze all those things from fuel to the changes with the social health insurance from NHIF, because they all have a bearing on the cost of living, including proposals on what you are saying on income disparities among us Kenyans. Asante sana.
How soon can we have that?
Yeah, how soon can you be able to do that?
You want us to do another submission?
Yeah.
Additional submission?
Yes.
The previous one was asking 14 days. I don't know whether 10 days will be good.
Yes.
10 days is fair enough.
10 days. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Ali.
Thank you.
And your team. We have next the Ilchamus community. Please, Sergeant at Arms, usher them in quickly. And we agreed we are only giving them 10 minutes because they are not even in our program. Yeah? Yeah?
Then we can come and
Senators Karibu, then usher in the Ilchamus community to sit right behind Senator Wambua and Senator Ojienda. And not everybody. Sergeant at Arms, they must select a small group. We don't want the drama of people coming to sing here.
But now,
Are you alone, Senator? Or Senator Ojienda? There was an indication that you are. You are to
look mystified.
Ojienda.
Why don't you allow us to listen to Jamus then, as you wait for your colleagues? Find out where they are.
but maybe they are not presenting together.
Chair,
They're all separate.
We were informed, Senator Wambua.
I need to be guided.
Yeah?
I need to be guided. I'm here on account of a memorandum that I sent to this team.
And in our meeting last week, we proposed, and I think it's Senator Mugeni who told us that there is a bicameral issue on the bicameral parliament that you are coming to present together with the Dama and Senator Tom Ojienda, because for the other individual member of parliament's memoranda, we had resolved to interact with the memoranda and avoid the face-to-face engagements, since we have not also accorded the same to other Kenyans. And we said in the spirit of fairness to other Kenyans, we interact with your memoranda just like we interact with all other Kenyans' memoranda, unless it is a group, and that's why we were convinced by Senator Mugeni there was a bicameral issue that you had to present together with Senator Ojienda and Senator Olekina. Just like we have a group of 27 members of parliament addressing the issue of proposed counties, and I know your memoranda also touched on a proposed county of Mwingi. I'll probably propose, if it is that's the issue you are here on, probably it's fairer to join the other group so that we listen to you on the issue of bicameralism.
Yeah, let me just intervene. Just first of all, for us to confirm where the two other senators are there or not, but even if they aren't there, since he has come at the time that we allotted for them, would they indulge him? Yes, for just a few minutes, then we excuse him. Yeah.
No, you know the way Mheshimiwa Omar is putting this matter, we start on the wrong footing. No, it's okay.
Omar is not on record. Maybe you respond to what I have said and Honorable Pio.
Okay, let me go on record.
Yeah.
Co-chair, first of all, I'm happy that you've invited me to make a presentation to this team. Those conversations that you had with the team about then what it is that I'll come and present on were not communicated to me.
Okay.
So if you had an internal communication amongst yourselves and you did not inform me, it would be very unfair, co-chair, to expect that I have come from Kitui to make a point on Mwingi County. Wait, I listen to you, wait. To make a point on Mwingi County, yes. Then you tell me
Senator,
I have to wait for my colleagues.
I just want confirmation from the Secretariat that was not communicated because that are the instructions we gave. Emigen, is he here?
In an event, Chair, since we had agreed we hear him, let's just hear him. Avoid those other things and let's...
We hear you?
Yeah.
10 minutes. We have a whole list, Senator.
Hey, that's okay. I'll make it 5 minutes.
Please, we would be happy if it was even 5.
That's okay. So I thank the team for inviting me, and as I said, my presentation is on a proposal that I sent to this team on a constitutional matter in relation to the creation of Mwingi County. Co-chairs, for the information of this team, this is not a conversation that started yesterday. It's a matter that I've been engaged in since 2019. Those of your colleagues who sat with me in the Senate between 2017 and 2022 will remember that I brought this proposal to the Senate, and that time actually Omogeni was the chair of the Justice and Legal Affairs Committee. When we were accorded an opportunity to present a memoranda to the then BBI, I made the same presentation. And so I will take you through what it is that I'm thinking, and I will leave the final decision to the team. Co-chairs, I am guided by Article 6 of the Constitution of Kenya, Article 6.1, that provides that the territory of Kenya is divided into the counties specified in the first schedule. By that statement alone, it should be noted that the drafters of the Constitution were alive to the fact that there is no magic number in number 47. That the first schedule can be amended to create more counties or even to reduce the number of counties. So on the basis of that chapter 6.1 of the Constitution, I do make a presentation on a proposal to create a second county in Kitui called Mwingi. My idea, co-chairs, is what I would call authentic. It's an original, authentic idea. I do understand, as you have mentioned, co-chair, there is also a caucus of members of the National Assembly
who are also pushing the agenda of creating additional counties in this country. Respectively, Mr. Chairman, a lot of that, again, is a Me Too attitude, that now that some people are asking for counties, we'll also ask for additional counties. My idea is authentic in the sense that, Mr. Chairs, the genesis of the creation of counties in this country under the 2010 Constitution was informed by a decision in Naivasha that the districts that had been created and gazetted around 1992-93 would be given a county status. At that time, co-chairs, there were 48 districts that were created up to and including 92-93. What the mistake was, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairs, is that the districts that were created around the same time that Mwingi district was created from Kitui district, including Tharaka-Nithi from Meru and Makueni from Machakos, were given county status because they had been gazetted as districts. Unfortunately, at creation, Mwingi district was not immediately gazetted, and for that reason, we lost out on a county status. The chairs, it is the same challenge that I found when I was elected the senator of Kitui County, that Kitui County had lost out on benefiting from the equalization fund because, again, of technical issues. It took my personal intervention in the offices of the CRA to argue that it would look bad in the eyes of an ordinary Kenyan to hear that some sections in Kiambu and Nyeri and Murang'a are benefiting from the equalization fund, and not a single area in Kitui had been listed to benefit from the equalization fund. And that is how then the formula of moving from classifying marginalized areas in regard to counties was changed, and now they started looking at areas, villages, locations, where then you would have pockets of marginalization for counties to begin to benefit from the equalization fund. Co-chairs, my proposal is an attempt to cure an injustice vested and visited on the people of Mwingi, and by extension the entire Lower Eastern region, on account of a failure by the Office of the Attorney General to gazette a district. And I am urging this committee, the National Dialogue Committee, not to grant the invitation from any quarter to be bystanders as the people of Mwingi continue to suffer this injustice. Co-chairs and members, the object of this proposal, which I have presented to you, is to amend the Constitution of Kenya and to ensure that and services are brought closer to the people by splitting the expansive Kitui County into 2 counties. For the information of these members and for the record, the distance between the southern farthest end of Kitui, which is Adi Town, to the farthest northern end of Kitui, which is Usweni, is 350 kilometers. The distance from Bomet to Nairobi, traversing Narok County, Nakuru County, Kiambu County, and Nairobi, is 228 kilometers. So as you travel from Bomet to Nairobi, you have only covered half of Kitui County. And the beauty of our county is that it is settled all over. You wouldn't say that there are regions in Kitui County that have no settlements. So the distance to service, to take service to the people in the farthest end of the county is a challenge to the administrators, and that is why we are asking this committee, if and when, because I believe that there will be an opportunity to open the constitution. If then that opportunity is availed, then you should consider correcting the injustice, the technicality on Mwingi, and I'm saying that we have 3 constituencies in Mwingi, which is Mwingi Central, Mwingi West, and Mwingi North, and a total number of 15 wards, which would constitute a county either from Kitui, with a population of about 450,000 people, according to the 2019 annual census report. The Speaker, the Chair, is I move towards closure. There have been arguments against this push, and you heard them on the floor. There are people who will argue that it is too expensive to create an additional county. There are others who argue that why Kitui and not X or Y county. My response to that, co-chairs, is that anybody arguing about the expenses of creating a new county is just being unrealistic. And if you think then democracy is expensive, we could try anarchy. There is nothing in expenses that should stop a people, a population, from enjoying the benefits of devolution. Because we have comparative jurisdiction, co-chairs. We have counties in this country that are much smaller than the proposed Mwingi County, much smaller. I could mention just 2 or 3 of them. Kirinyaga County, with a landmass of 1,479 square kilometers, is a county. In fact, I make this joke, co-chairs, about Kirinyaga County, that the county is so small, and I'm not saying that they should be denied their status, no. They're so small that even the Catholic Church has not established a diocese in Kirinyaga. It is administered from Muranga, and yet they have a county status. You go to Lamu with 2 constituencies. Go to Isiolo with 2 constituencies. You go to Samburu with 3 constituencies. Tharaka-Nithi, which is even smaller than Kirinyaga, with 3 constituencies. Co-chairs, it is my submission. I see the co-chair wants to interrupt me. You can.
Thank you. Not to interrupt, I was just prompting you to wind up, as I also noted that you are avoiding mentioning Nyamira, which is in your document, because the Senator Okongo is here.
I have not mentioned Nyamira, I have not mentioned Mombasa, I have not mentioned Vihiga. I said I mentioned just a few of them. Nyamira happens to be one of those ones that I did not mention.
Senator Wabue, you are cleverly avoiding Nyamira.
No.
Because of Senator Okongo Mugeni here.
No. He knows you don't roll that way. He knows very well. So,
if you can wind up, please.
Let me wind up. My proposal, co-chairs, comes complete with a proposed draft amendment bill. It's attached to my proposal. And for the ease of reference, the only thing that we're looking at doing is actually amending only 3 sections of the Constitution. Article 97 of the Constitution, that makes reference to 47 women representatives. We change that to read 48. Article 98, which makes reference to 47 senators, we move to 48. And the same article 98B, the clause dealing with 16 nominated as women senators, because this proposal actually even cures on the gender representation. So we move from 16 nominated senators to 18 women, and then of course amending the first schedule.
Thank you, Senator, since the proposal is attached. Okay. Members,
just
up here.
A small clarification.
Aaron,
Senator Wangwa.
leave it alone.
And thank you very much, Senator, for this very, very precise and concise presentation, and done so eloquently. Just one issue, for record purposes, if in your view, such an amendment would require a referendum or not, just that only, and then just a light note on the issue of the Catholic dioceses. You know, even Siaya County is administered under one diocese together with Kisumu, despite them being too big.
It must be very small.
You know, Wangua is a Catholic, so let us.
Certainly is not a Catholic.
He's not Catholic.
That I have to
I see. Yeah, I see. Yes. So I'm not sure whether he has a diocese in Siaya or in Kirinyaga. Aaron?
Thank you. I sure do know they have a couple of churches. I'm not sure. Yeah, I know. Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Senator Wambua, for finding time to come. Now, I know how passionate you are about this particular cause. And my question to you is not to the people of Kitui specifically, and you who's a representative, but it's a wholesome team that appears before us. You're here, right behind you are people from Ilchamus in Baringo County and spread out in other counties in Kenya. We have previously listened to about 2 or 3 others, and tomorrow we listen to 27 colleagues of ours who are on a similar quest. So therefore, I don't want you to take this question as either opposition or support to you, the quest that you have, but it's just to help appreciate and see if you do appreciate the economic situation that the country finds itself in, and how do you plead given that there is statistics out there, Senator. First of all, number one, to argue for or against this long debate that we've had from 1963 on population versus land size. Because if the people of Kirinyaga were here as well, just to use as an example, they'd say that for half the population of what they have, close to almost 650,000 people, against your population by 2019 statistics of 1.1, they get only 50% of the allocation that you get to administer and do the same. I could even make it better and say my own people, the people of Kericho, same number in size, 1 million population. Our county shareable allocation is somewhere upwards of 6 billion. Yours is 10 point something billion. And therefore I could push a case and say, on account of population alone, it deserves to be similar. Therefore, it's a very complex debate, which when we have the challenge, and the reason why I'll ask you this, and perhaps not any other of the groups that have presented, is because you're a leader, we sit together in Senate, and you understand the intrigues and the difficulties that the country continues to face wouldn't you propose rather a way and means of ensuring that services get closer to your people more than just creation of an administrative unit? And you know this, Senator Wambua, that in all our 47 counties presently, and this is something that we need to consider in Senate in the next coming days, all our counties are in violation of Section 25 of the PFM Act. There is none that is devoting more than 30% of their shareable revenue to development. So therefore, what you end up doing is that when you create additional counties, you're giving jobs to perhaps a maximum of 1,000, 2,000 people, but what eventually gets as actual development to the people that you're seeking is only 20% of that. Haven't you thought of maybe of another way other than just creation of a county, of trying to ensure that your people get justice? I thank you, Chair.
Yes, Senator, we'll allow you to quickly respond to those two.
Yes, I will. Let me begin with Oli.
I need to say this before you do that. You're quite right. The Attorney General Emeritus was sitting there before you, actually confirmed that he was the violator. He's the one who gave the list in order to break the stalemate, because some were asking for 100, others 18, and others. So he really used like a rule of the thumb and said those which were which had been gazetted as districts. And although Mwingi was announced, I remember that, about the same time Tharaka Nithi was given the district status, and Makueni, and Mwingi was just not gazetted. It's really, you're quite right in saying the Office of the Attorney General let down the people of Mwingi, because that was the criterion that was being used. So I want just to agree with you on that score.
I think your party leader, it feels good when your party leader agrees with you. Now I can deal with the rest. On the matter of the referendum, yes. I think because this will touch on the structure of devolution, then it's a question that should go to the people and let the people of Kenya decide whether it is something they want to do. I'm very clear about that. On the matter of what Senator Cheruiyot is asking, who is also my leader in the Senate, two things. One, he brings in the argument that I started with, the Me Too argument, that if you create Mwingi County, then other people will say, Me Too, and will give their reasons. But I am convinced, and my party leader has borne me out, that the reason why we don't have Mwingi County today is not because another person was given a county. It is because somebody slept on their job. The Attorney General did not gazette Mwingi County alongside Tharaka Nithi and Makueni. And on that account, now the people of Mwingi will continue to suffer injustice because of the mistake of one person. That's the way I look at it. Secondly, Senator Cheruiyot, this country is defined, Kenya is defined as its citizens and its land. And that's why a lot of presidents will say we will not cede an inch to anyone, because land is important. So land mass is as important to this country as the population is. So the argument that there are people that have huge populations and small pieces of land, in my case, does not arise, because then what you lose in land mass, you gain in population. And what you lose in population, then you gain in land mass. And as I conclude, I say this. Devolution, Honorable Team, devolution has actually been hijacked at county headquarters. The drafters of this constitution, and that's why they are leaving that Article 6 open. They did not envisage a situation where, when you create a county headquarters, now that is the end of devolution, things now should work properly from there. No. That should have been the beginning of it. That we should evolve further to wards, to constituencies. And by extension, then this one county, this just one county in this country, Mwingi, that was denied a right by the mistake of one person. I will leave it to you to decide whether you want just to say they lost and they lost, then let them live with it, or you may want to correct that injustice on account of the fact that we all agree, and the AJ Emeritus was here, as you've told me, he has confirmed that it is him that did not gazette Mwingi. I rest my case.
Thank you, Senator. And it is indeed true. He was seated right where you are seated, and he made that concession. We hear you and sympathize with not you only, but the people of Mwingi and many other Kenyans who feel that there is some element of injustice. But that is why we are here. We will consider yours and those of other Kenyans. Asante. Na kwaheri if you are traveling back to Kitui County. Or is it to you're doing badly. I thought you invite me for lunch. and unfortunately, Senator, and it's good because the four the state are here, and I saw the nation accuse this committee of gobbling up 100 million shillings. And I heard, I think over the weekend, someone saying that we are sipping expensive tea and champagne. We unfortunately have no facilities. We are here to get a shilling. Even the waters and the conference facilities, we are here courtesy of a well-wisher, one of our civil society organizations that have been meeting the conferencing facility costs, including our teas and light meals when we have a long day like today. But unfortunately, because of you and the Ilchamus and Public Service Commission who are here, we are not even able to break for lunch.
That's okay. Chair, actually, let me help you there, because then it's a problem. And let's confirm to media, because I sat in this committee, the first team. And to be honest to this country, there is no government money that is being spent on these things. It's a volunteer service. It's people doing this for the nation. So thinking that government is giving these people allowances or monies, I think we should disabuse ourselves of that notion and just allow Kenyans to do their job. They're just doing their job.
Thank you, Senator. We will request, just hold on, we request Public Service Commission. I'm told you have a meeting at 3:30. So we request the Chamus community to hold on.
No, just sit.
Letagule, just take your seats first. We allow the Public Service Commission. They will be very brief. We wanted to slot in at you at their time, but they have insisted. So we allow them a quick presentation. Thank you. I believe you know everybody here. We will not bother you with introductions. Maybe you just introduce yourselves for the record and move straight on to your presentation. I'm told it's a very brief one. It will take 5 or 10 minutes?
10, not more than 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, co-chairs, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah and Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, and the honorable members of this committee. Greetings from the Public Service Commission. My name is Anton Mushiri. I'm the chairperson of the Public Service Commission. And today I'm accompanied by my director of legal. Her name is Jacqueline Manani. It is a privilege for us to be here on your invitation, honorable co-chairs and members, to this most important National Dialogue Committee. By way of introduction, the Public Service Commission did receive a letter from the National Dialogue Committee on 19 September 2023 for oral presentations on the 5 agenda items forming the terms of reference of the committee. Honorable co-chairs, we've already given our written submissions to the Secretariat, and these documents should be getting to this committee shortly. The Commission does welcome and appreciate the invitation, it being a major stakeholder in the labor market of this country, as it is responsible both directly and indirectly in the management of over 300,000 public officers through various instruments developed and or approved by the Commission. Honorable Co-Chairs, the Commission is established under Article 233 of the Constitution, and its mandate is outlined in Article 234, of which I will not belabor. It is clearly spelled out in the Constitution. So from the foregoing, the Commission's role in public service institutional development and management is central, not only to the government of the day, but to the nation as a whole. In view of its mandate, the Commission bears the responsibility for improving the capability of the public service to provide strategic and innovative policy advice that spurs growth to meet citizens' expectations. That is why it is normally referred to in our mission charter as a citizen-centric public service. So, Honorable Co-Chairs, the Commission did consider the request of the National Dialogue Committee and hereby presents its views and proposals. On electoral justice and related matters, that's the restructuring and reconstitution of the IEBC. Honorable Co-Chairs, IEBC has been a matter of concern to many Kenyans and public servants equally, and indeed to the Public Service Commission. Partly because of the anxiety raised by its decisions in all electoral processes. The institution should therefore be restructured in a manner that makes it more effective, efficient, and credible on matters elections. Restructuring and reconstitution of IBC should be done in the spirit and letter of the Constitution. IBC is an independent constitutional commission, as defined in Article 248(2) of the Constitution, with the object of protecting the sovereignty of the people, securing the observance by all state organs of democratic values and principles, and promoting constitutionalism as provided in Article 245 of the Constitution. The Public Service Commission is also bound by this. These objectives should be at the core of restructuring IEBC to ensure that the persons who will eventually be appointed as members will be able to deliver on their mandate. Co-chairs, for purposes of objectivity and independent identification of members of IEBC, the framework and process of restructuring and reconstitution of IEBC as an independent commission should be defined in a manner that would not be subject to interference or influence by various quarters of society, including political parties. The recruitment of members of IEBC should be shielded from political party interests that ultimately cast aspersions on the results of elections. Co-chairs, in other words, the members of IEBC should be like Caesar's wife, the beyond reproach. The process of appointment of persons as chairpersons and members should be competitive, objective, and fair, and should safeguard the interest of the major stakeholders, particularly the people of Kenya, rather than a select few segment of the society. Number two, outstanding constitution matters, the cost of living. The rising cost of living has continuously impacted negatively on public officers, which has resulted in a low morale, poor performance, and poor social welfare of officers, some of whom are undergoing depression, for, amongst other reasons, the inability to meet their financial obligations as and when they fall due. Data held by the State Department for Public Service shows that 12,532 public officers sought psychosocial support in the financial year 2022-23 as compared to 6,616 in the financial year 2018-19, representing an increase of 84%. Inability of public officers to maintain the 1/3 of net salary requirements, thereby causing pecuniary embarrassment to the officers. Co-chairs, the Commissioner's access to the public service payroll management system, which shows that out of 79,253 public officers in the civil service, 17,132, representing 21.62%, earn less than 1/3 of their basic salary. Additionally, out of 31,892 officers in the prison service, 13,661, which is a 42.8.3%, earn less than 1/3 of their basic salary. In the discipline services, out of 106,667 officers, 51,784, representing 48.5%, earn less than 1/3 of their basic salary. This data paints a grim picture of the situation that public officers are faced with as and when additional taxes and levies are introduced in their paycheck. Our recommendations are that majority of public officers are servicing mortgages either through the Civil Servants Housing Scheme or other non-public schemes. This affects their disposable income and, in essence, their quality of life. The Commission therefore proposes that either the taxation regime be reviewed, a considered wage increase be mooted, or public officers who are servicing mortgages be exempted from additional and similar levies taxes so as to give relief to public officers and boost performance and delivery of services. Our second recommendation on this is a staggered implementation of the housing levy and possibly consider basing the levy on the basic salary rather than the gross salary. In a similar manner, the NSSF contributions were reformed. This would cushion employees from the adverse effects of the all-round increase in taxes and ensure that all employees are in as much as possible within the 1/3 net salary requirement. Co-chairs, the number of levies and the VAT imposed on fuel can also be reviewed so as to reduce the cost of fuel that has a ripple effect on the cost of living. Implementation of the 2/3 gender rule. The Commission does implement the 2/3 gender rule in all its appointments. Additionally, the Commission, while recommending persons for appointment, always provides a list that meets the 2/3 gender rule. The Commission is also developing an affirmative action paper that will translate into regulations that will be applicable within the public service, falling within the jurisdiction of the Public Service Commission. On this recommendation, co-chairs, the Commission proposes that an affirmative action framework in the form of legislation be developed and implemented to comply with the 2/3 gender rule for appointive positions across the entire service. With regard to elective positions in Parliament, a provision similar to Article 177B of the Constitution should be adopted to fill up any gender shortfalls in both the National Assembly and the Senate, respectively. On governance issues, including promoting national unity and inclusivity in public appointments, the Commission does observe the provisions of Article 10 and 232 of the Constitution while appointing or recommending persons for appointment to positions in the public service. Recommendation on this: it is our view as a Commission that there are adequate constitutional and statutory safeguards that provide for inclusivity. The conversation that the country should therefore be having is on how to ensure compliance by all appointing authorities. There is therefore need for parliamentary oversight through receipt of an annual recruitment report that is in the nature of a human resource audit report for all appointing authorities. This would enable Parliament to impose such sanctions for non-compliance with the constitutional and statutory provisions on inclusivity. In conclusion, Honourable Chairs, Co-Chairs, the Commission supports the national dialogue and hopes that the results of the dialogue will improve the welfare of public officers, leading to an efficient and effective public service that delivers services to the citizens of Kenya as expected. Thank you for listening. To the Public Service Commission, I beg to submit.
Thank you, Commissioner Mushiri and your legal director. Maybe just a quick one from me. You have enumerated data on the public servants, and you actually contend that a number of them are earning below 1/3 of their basic salary as their take home. And you are proposing either a review of the tax regime or a considered wage increase to be mooted. From where you sit as the chair of the Public Service Commission, how would we be able to strike a balance between increments of wages, especially for public officers, and what has been seen as a bloated civil service, not both at the national government level and at the county government's level? How can we increase the earnings of public servants and also deal with what is politically a hot potato, like having to rationalize the staff establishments at all levels of government?
Okay. Can I go? Ambassador Wajiri.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the work you're trying to do with Public Service Commission. I'll ask you a subjective question. How independent is a Public Service Commission? Your recent appointment of so many vice chancellors, for example, where the commission was given a list and told to abide by it, doesn't that embarrass you? And do you render correct advice to the appointing authorities? Number two, how often do you make a report to Parliament on the very critical issue of inclusivity? Again, I refer you to the recent recruitment at the Kenya Revenue Authority, where clearly you're saying there's sufficient safeguards in law, and indeed there are, and you say the conversation we should be having is whether there's compliance. Some of these are embarrassing. We want a nation where every Kenyan belongs. The recent conversation we've had in the country is whether there are Kenyans or Kenya comprises a community of stakeholders and non-stakeholders. And although all of them pay heavily when it comes to the levies. Then thirdly, that a lot of your public officers are having negative pay slips, particularly the police force. Wanaongezwa pesa 4,000 kwa upande moja, kwa njia moja na ingine inapotea, and they are actually negative. No wonder that a lot of them have gone for counseling. Therefore, this issue, and thank you for this very clear presentation. You're calling a spade a spade. We have a problem. And you're even recommending that we don't implement the housing levy immediately. We need to do something about it. But you know, yet our friends on Kenya Kwanza insist this is their government. They should be allowed to deal with it the best way they can, and the opposition should then be shouting or something like that. I think that this memorandum is critical, and I congratulate you for being very bold about it, and I think Kenyans should stand guided.
Thank you, Opium. Thank you very, very briefly, as usual. I just want to understand from where you sit, Ambassador Mshiri, because the lingering question of imbalances in employment, both in terms of geographical areas, ethnicity, and so on. Your commission is supposed to play a role in addressing such imbalances. But apparently, there are instances where public institutions have gone ahead to defy you, and in fact could be recruiting without your authority. How do you say about that? But secondly, these rampant cases of public servants or civil servants earning less than a third of their basic salary as a result of the very, very many taxes that have been imposed on them, including the housing levy. From where you sit, does this go against law? Is there a law that provides for that one-third rule on basic salary? Okay, thank you.
Maybe, Ambassador, you will confirm to avoid the Honorable Pio and I, for obvious reasons, putting words in your mouth, whether those public officers who may be taking a third or less home of their basic pay are doing so on account of any tax measures, recent tax measures, or is a situation that persisted even before the tax measures. And that I believe you would have empirical evidence to show, for instance, that when you increase VAT from 8 to 16% on fuel, a policeman who was earning, taking home 20,000 shillings is now taking home 15,000. That kind of empirical evidence.